History often turns on the smallest of moments. The stories of great battles are not just tales of generals and strategies, but of individual soldiers who found themselves at the very center of the storm. This is one such account, a first-hand testimony from a man who was given a crucial order and became an accidental witness to history. First, be sure to like and subscribe to WinLink Deep Dive to support our investigative community. Private John Martin, born Giovanni Martino in Italy in 1852, was an Italian-American serviceman and trumpeter for the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the United States Army. He is remembered as one of the very few who lived through the Battle of the Little Bighorn, often called Custer's Last Stand, on June 25, 1876. After immigrating to America, he joined the Army in 1873. Assigned to the 7th Cavalry, he took part in multiple campaigns, including the fateful Battle at Little Bighorn. During the engagement, Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer dispatched him to carry a message to Captain Benteen. This duty meant he was among the final individuals to see Custer alive. Martin lived through the battle and later offered a comprehensive narrative of his actions, a report that now serves as a vital primary source for historians. At nearly 8 o'clock on the morning of June 25th, my Captain Benteen summoned me and directed me to report to General Custer to serve as his orderly trumpeter. The regiment was at that time several miles from the ridge separating the Rosebud and the Little Bighorn rivers. We had paused there to prepare coffee following a march through the night. We were aware, naturally, that a significant number of Indians were in the vicinity, as we had been passing through abandoned camps for 2 days and tracking a well-worn trail from the Rosebud. Furthermore, on the 24th, we had discovered dead buffalo that had been killed and skinned only a brief time earlier. I reported to the general in person, and he simply looked at me and gave a nod. He was in conversation with an Indian scout named Bloody Knife when I arrived, and Bloody Knife was informing him of a large village in the valley consisting of several hundred lodges and roughly 5,000 Sioux. I sat down a short distance away and listened to the discussion. I could not comprehend the Indian's words, but from the general's questions and his exchange with the interpreter, I grasped the subject. The general was attired that morning in a blue-gray flannel shirt, trousers of buckskin, and long boots. He had on a standard company hat. His famous yellow hair was cut short, not extremely short, but it was no longer long and curling on his shoulders as it once had been. Very shortly, the general leaped onto his horse and rode without a saddle around the camp, speaking to the officers in quiet tones and informing them of his intentions. By 8:30, the command was prepared to advance, and the scouts moved out ahead. We followed at a slow pace approximately 15 minutes afterward. I rode about 2 yards behind the general. We proceeded at a walk until about 2 hours later, when we reached a deep gully, where we stopped. The general left us there and went off with the scouts. I did not accompany him, but remained with the adjutant. This was when he ascended to the lookout point on the divide to search for the Sioux village that Bloody Knife had described. He was absent for a long duration, and when he returned, they informed him that fresh pony tracks had been discovered nearby and that the Sioux had detected our presence in the ravine. Immediately, he instructed me to sound the officer's call, which I did. This demonstrated that he now understood we could not take the Sioux by surprise, so there was no longer any purpose in maintaining silence. For the 2 prior days, there had been no trumpet calls, and every possible measure had been taken to hide our advance. But now, everything was different. The officers assembled quickly and held a serious council with the general. None of the men were permitted to approach them, but soon they separated and returned to their companies. Then we moved forward again, and after a time, around noon, crossed the divide. Soon after, the general said something to the adjutant that I could not make out, and gestured off to the left. Within minutes, Captain Benteen, leading 3 troops, separated from the column and rode off in the direction the general had indicated. I wondered where they were going because my troop was among them. The remainder of the regiment continued on, formed into 2 columns. Colonel Reno, commanding 3 troops, was on the left, and the other 5 troops under General Custer were on the right. I was riding directly behind the general. We followed the path of a small stream that led toward the Little Bighorn River. Reno was on the left bank, and we were on the right. Continuously, as we rode, scouts were coming and going, and the general would listen to them and sometimes gallop a short distance away to survey the area. At times, Reno's column was several hundred yards away, and at other times it was near to us. And then the general signaled with his hat, and they crossed over to our position. Soon we came upon an old teepee containing a dead warrior. It was burning. The Indian scouts had set it on fire. Just a short distance from that was a small hill from which Fred Gerard, one of the scouts, spotted some Indians between our position and the river. He called to the general and pointed them out, saying they were running away. The general ordered the Indian scouts to pursue them, but they refused. Then the general signaled to Colonel Reno, and when he rode up, the general told the adjutant to order him to proceed down, cross the river, and assault the Indian village, and that he would support him with the entire regiment. He stated he would go down to the other end and drive them, and that he would have Benteen make haste and attack them in the center. Reno, with his 3 troops, left immediately at a trot, heading for the river, and we followed for a few hundred yards before swinging to the right, moving down the river. We also went at a gallop, pausing only once to water the horses. The general appeared to be in a great hurry. After we had gone about a mile or 2, we arrived at a large hill that overlooked the valley, and we rode around its base and halted. Then the general took me with him, and we rode to the hill's summit, from where we could observe the village and the valley on the far side of the river. It was a sizable village, though we could not see all of it from there, a fact we did not realize then. However, several hundred teepees were clearly visible. No warriors could be seen. All we observed were some squaws and children at play, along with a few dogs and ponies. The general seemed both astonished and pleased, and remarked that the Indians must be asleep in their tents. We did not see anything of Reno's column from our vantage point on the hill. I am certain the general did not see them at all, because he looked all around with his field glasses, and all he said was that we had them this time. He turned in his saddle, removed his hat, and waved it so the men of the command, who were halted at the base of the hill, could see him, and he shouted to them, "Hurrah, boys! We've got them! We'll finish them up and then go home to our station." Then the general and I rode back down to where the troops were, and he spoke for a minute with the adjutant, telling him what he had observed. We rode on, quite rapidly, until we came to a large ravine that led toward the river, and the general pointed down there and then called for me. This was about a mile down the river from where we had ascended the hill, and we had been moving at a trot and galloped the entire way. It must have been approximately 3 miles from where we had left Reno's trail. The general said to me, "Orderly, I want you to take a message to Colonel Benteen. Ride as fast as you can and tell him to hurry. Tell him it's a big village, and I want him to be quick and to bring the ammunition packs." He did not stop at all while he was telling me this, and I simply said, "Yes, sir," and checked my horse when the adjutant said, "Wait, orderly, I'll give you a message." He stopped and wrote it down very hurriedly in a small book, then tore out the page and gave it to me, and then he instructed me, "Now, orderly, ride as fast as you can to Colonel Benteen. Take the same trail we came down. If you have time and there is no danger, come back, but otherwise stay with your company." My horse was quite tired, but I started back as fast as I could go. The last I saw of the command, they were heading down into the ravine. The gray horse troop was in the center, and they were galloping. The adjutant had told me to follow our trail back, and so in a few minutes, I was back on the same hill again where the general and I had viewed the village, but before I reached it, I heard firing behind me, and I looked back and saw Indians, some waving buffalo robes and some shooting. They had been lying in ambush. Just as I was nearing the top of the elevation, I happened upon Boston Custer. He was riding at a run, but when he saw me, he checked his horse and shouted, "Where's the general?" I answered, pointing behind me. "Right behind that next ridge you'll find him," and he dashed on. That was the final time he was seen alive. When I got up on the hill, I looked down, and there I saw Reno's battalion engaged in combat. It had not been more than 10 or 15 minutes since the general and I were on the hill, and then we had seen no Indians, but now there were many of them, riding around and shooting at Reno's men, who were dismounted and formed in a skirmish line. I do not know how many Indians there were, but there were a great number. I did not have time to stop and observe the fight. I had to get to Colonel Benteen, but the last I saw of Reno's men, they were fighting in the valley, and their line was falling back. Some Indians spotted me because they immediately began shooting at me. Several shots were fired at me, I believe, but I was fortunate and was not hit. My horse was struck in the hip, though I did not know it until later. It was an extremely warm day, and my horse was hot, and I kept on as fast as I was able. I did not know where Colonel Benteen was, nor where to search for him, but I knew I had to find him. I followed our trail back to the place we had watered our horses and scanned the area for Colonel Benteen. Soon I saw his command approaching. I was riding at a jog trot then. My horse was completely exhausted, and I was searching everywhere for Colonel Benteen. As soon as I saw them coming, I waved my hat to them and spurred my horse, but he could not go any faster. It was only a short distance before I met Colonel Benteen. He was riding a considerable distance in front of his troops, with his orderly trumpeter at a fast trot. The nearest officer to him was Captain Weir, who was at the head of his troop about 200 or 300 yards back. I saluted and handed the message to Colonel Benteen, and then I told him what the general had said, that it was a big village and to hurry. He asked, "Where's the general now?" I answered that the Indians we saw were running, and I assumed that by that time he had charged through the village. I was going to tell him about Major Reno being in action too, but he did not give me the opportunity. He said, "What's the matter with your horse?" I said, "He's just tired out, I guess." The colonel said, "Tired out? Look at his hip." Then I saw the blood from the wound. Colonel Benteen said, "You're lucky it was the horse and not you." By this time, Captain Weir had come up to us, and Colonel Benteen handed the message to him to read and told me to join my company. They provided me with another horse, and I joined my troop and rode on with them. The pack train was not very far behind them. It was in sight, perhaps a mile away, and the mules were coming along, some walking, some trotting, and others running. We moved forward faster than the packs could travel, and soon they were out of sight, except that we could see their dust. The echo of that trumpet call faded into the smoke and chaos of the valley, leaving a young soldier alone on a desperate ride. His account provides us with a chilling, ground-level view of history's turning points, where entire destinies hinge on a single message and the courage of the messenger. It's a powerful reminder that history is made by people, not just legends. If this deep dive into history's gray areas captivated you, please support our efforts to bring you more content like this. Hit the like button, subscribe to WinLink Deep Dive, and tap the bell to never miss a story. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep questioning.